Redditors who spend a lot of time in seclusion, at sea, in the air, or out in the wilderness. What's the creepiest or most mysterious thing you've seen, found, or experienced? Too long didn't read. Was out in the mountains for 4 days by myself. Felt like I was being followed over 30 plus miles. First night I slept, not in my tent. It was destroyed and cut to pieces. On a 2-week solo backpacking trip, I had 4 days in seclusion between ranger station check-ins. On the first day of the seclusion, I felt like I was being stalked. As I lay in my tent that night, I could hear what sounded to me like footsteps around my camp but never coming too close. In the morning, I checked all around and found no evidence of footprints or having any wildlife around me. I broke down camp and took off trying to put it behind me. The second night was the same thing. I grew so paranoid that when I would hike during the day, I would go over rocks, walk through streams, anything to try and break the trail so I couldn't be tracked. I'd go around a blind turn and then sit there for an hour waiting to see if something would come behind. At night, I couldn't sleep for more than 10 or 15 minutes before waking up. Finally, I got to the ranger station check-in and told them what I had been experiencing. I went and set up camp as close to the station as I could. Later, the rangers, they offered for me to sleep on their couch for comfort and so I could actually sleep. I accepted and stayed the night indoors. I walked out to my camp in the morning and it had been destroyed. My tent was cut on the side, sleeping bag ripped, and backpack turned inside out. The rangers came and reported it, took pictures and everything. I ended up getting one of the rangers to give me a ride back to the base camp and going home the next day. My fiancé and I went hiking up a mountain in the Pacific Northwest last summer. It's perpetually muddy due to a large number of waterfalls along the sides of the trail, so there's no way you can avoid getting at least a little dirty. Around an hour and a half up the trail, we passed 2 men wearing black suits, black hats, black glasses, holding black leather briefcases and wearing black dress shoes. Completely clean dress shoes, and immaculately clean pressed pants. Not a spot of dirt or a wrinkle on either of their clothes. As we passed each other, one of them whispered something in German. I looked back at them and they were both standing still and looking back at us, staring. This was one of the creepiest things that has ever happened to me. And I've had my fair share of strange experiences. I used to work for the US Forest Service and sometimes worked with an older gentleman that had lots of interesting stories from his many years of life. But by far the most chilling tale was from when he was working in a very secluded area of wilderness and was walking through the forest when a thunderstorm hit. He had seen an opening in the hill a little while back and headed to it to take shelter. Once inside, he shined his flashlight to check he wasn't going to wake up a bear or something, and found the skeleton of a man sitting in a lawn chair with a rifle rigged up so he had been able to shoot himself. The skeleton was still wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. I've met a lot of liars in my time and this guy wasn't one. He'd honestly just led an interesting life. So I worked at a ranch in southern Arizona, right on the border. I didn't really consider it to be secluded because I had horses and cows. In hindsight, I guess it was really lonely because sometimes they'd talk back to me. Anyways, doing fence borders with a guy from another camp and we had to go down into this dry riverbed. As we round the bend, we see a bunch of beat-up trucks sitting there armed to the teeth. Turns out we ran into some kind of big deal for a cartel. The other guy told me to keep steady and we just walked straight through them on our horses. Everyone staring at us, looking like they were ready to shoot us up if we made one false move. I asked about it when we got to the other side without turning into Swiss cheese, and the more experienced rancher told me, the cartel only cares about border patrol and cops. They know this is a ranch and they know we roam around here, and they know we don't say much. Reason being, if they ever assumed the ranchers were the snitches, they could easily find our little ranch houses. Only had one person to so many acres. Could have been offed and left there for many days before someone noticed. With all that in mind, I had a very passive relationship with those kind from then on. I was running on a logging road in central Wisconsin and stopped because I felt like I was being watched. It was just an instinctive feeling. That's when I noticed a large wolf step out of the forest about 50 yards ahead of me. It was just staring and I stared back. After about 30 seconds of us checking each other out, it just slipped back into the woods and was gone. I kept running in the same direction but never really shook the feeling of being watched. I guess it's not that scary because wolves rarely attack people, but you betcha it was creepy enough being alone out there. So out where I live, it's just outside of a town nestled at the bottom of the mountains. For your information, I live in Australia, and it's not too secluded since I live with my family and you'll generally come across someone's property every 500 meters, but there are some stretches where you won't see a house for a kilometer. One night, my mom and I are coming home pretty late at night and we're just talking and listening to the radio. We come around a corner and we both saw this creature that I still don't know what it is till this day. But it had the body the size of a medium dog, mangy looking black fur, an almost abnormally large head, big green eyes, which was the first thing I noticed, but most weirdly, an almost impossibly long and thin neck, like it shouldn't be able to support the large head. My mother and I are cussing like sailors at this point and make a U-turn around to get a better look at it, and within 10 seconds there was no trace of it. Normally, I'd brush this off as probably a wild dog, but the body just didn't look like a dog, and it was too big for a cat, even a wild one. The real scary part is that my family and I have seen that maybe 2 to 3 times now, almost exclusively late at night. However, my SO's father has said that he's also seen it twice, once at night and once at daytime, and I get the feeling we're not the only people in town to have seen it. I don't live in Tasmania, so it's pretty much impossible or near impossible to be a Tasmanian devil or thylacine. Driving through the middle of Montana one night, going about 100 miles per hour, past something on the side of the interstate that looks like a mangled body. Turned around at the next pass, came back, definitely a body. Put my lights on it and tried to call 911 on my cell. No reception. Got in the car to see if I could pick up cell reception. Lights were still on. Nothing there but the blood splatters. Drove away quick. I went on a 2.5-week long hike in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, like a couple of hours from even the smallest of towns. One night, I decided to set up camp on a ridge line overlooking a valley with a dirt road bisecting it. Most nights I would have had a small fire, but it was breezy and was cutting across the ridge pretty hard. I think the weather saved my life. At about 10 p.m., a truck drove down the road and there was a rhythmic pattern of door opens, dome light comes on, driver grabs something from the passenger floorboard, drops it out of the truck, closes the door, drives slowly for 20 seconds, and repeats. He did that for what looked like a mile. I thought it was weird, but whatever. 15 minutes later, a different vehicle, a Suburban, drive up along the road. The driver was holding a flashlight out the window and stopped in the same spots the truck did. Open door, pick up something, close door, drive. Open door, pick up something, drive. I don't know what it was, but I'm convinced that I would have ended up a couple more bullets in me than I'd like if I had that campfire. This is more mysterious than creepy. We were camping in Montana near Yellowstone Park in a small campground. It was the off-season and there were maybe 5 other people there, including a couple 3 to 4 spots down who had a large dog with them in their RV. I walked by and the dog was friendly, so I petted it and talked to it and went on my way. Later that night, I am sitting watching the sunset and reading on my Kindle when a cold nose bumps up under my arm, like dog does when it wants attention. I figured it was the dog and started scratching its head. Before I could look around, my friend came around the corner and froze with a look of fright on his face. I was scratching the head of a pretty big gray wolf. I had no idea what to do. I didn't want to keep touching it, but I didn't want to stop and piss it off either. I scratched for maybe 5 to 10 more seconds and it just looked at me like, "Thanks, bro," and walked off into the woods. We went to a hotel that night. I don't spend much time in seclusion, but I still have a story. I live in rural Ohio. One of my friends owns a nice barn and farmhouse out in the sticks where the buses don't run and there's no service. He doesn't actually live there. His family owns the house for shiggles. They are millionaires. We've never ran there and it's pretty scenic woods, so we decided we'd give it a shot. He and I ran cross country and our team went to state that year to run, so we were in really good shape. We get to his barn and plan on running 8 miles near a road and then through the woods. We have GPS watches so we can just make our own path and either turn back at 4 miles or make a looping path if we so desire. After about 2 miles of running on the road, we took a random gravel road through the woods and there was a hiking path through it, so we decided to take it. We live in the country, so it really isn't a big deal. We've done this sort of thing before. I've gotten lost in the woods and in runs a few times throughout high school, but we have never done it here so far away from home. I don't run with my glasses on and I'm blind as a bat. I'm making good pace when all of a sudden I smack into my friend. I look up and he's just standing there. I focus at what he's looking at and there's bear trap hanging on a branch in front of us. Looking around, there's more, all blowing in the breeze. Off in the middle, perched up against a tree, was something that resembled a man. My friend pushed me and told me to run. We didn't say a word until we got back to the main road because we ran so fast. Turns out my friend saw what looked like a bloody scarecrow leaning against the tree. He saw bear traps on the ground too. I live in the only house down a country road. Everything else is pasture land and national forest for several miles. About 3 a.m., my 3 large dogs go absolutely nuts barking, which sends my husband and I flying out of bed to check on our livestock, assuming coyotes were in the yard. Before we could even get our shoes on, we hear muttering on our front porch. He grabs his rifle and whoever it is starts knocking on the door with no real urgency but more like a casual visitor. I had my cell phone already dialing the cops and my husband slid up to the peephole. A woman right around her late 20s to early 30s was standing outside, patiently waiting a few minutes and gently knocking on the door, not fidgeting or nervous, not being aggressive. My husband said, "Ma'am, the cops are on the way. If you need help, they'll be here in just a few minutes and you're welcome to sit on the swing right there and wait on them. But if there's anyone with you, we are armed in here and will not hesitate to shoot if anyone tries getting into this house." He said she kind of smiled, not creepy, but like she was glad her knocking woke someone up. "That's okay, sir. I just wanted to let you know the thing in the woods is coming and he'll be here soon. Good luck." He said she turned around and walked down the driveway like she hadn't a care in the world. The cops looked all over the place and couldn't find her. It's a 10-minute drive to our driveway from the main road, with no houses until you get into town, another 20 minutes away. Freaked me out for weeks. Tuesday, a neighbor from the next street over asked us if we had any more issues with late-night visitors. We told him we hadn't, and he said a girl matching the description we gave them when we asked if anyone knew her knocked on their door over the weekend. He said it was the same. She very calmly knocked, but this time she said she needed help. He told her he'd get the cops and an ambulance for her, and he heard a male voice saying, "No cops." The girl started asking for water or a phone or to use the bathroom at 1 or 2 a.m. He kept her talking, and luckily there was a cop super close on the highway this time because they pulled up and caught them. 1 girl, 2 guys. They had a car parked down the road a little bit with another girl in the driver's seat. As it turns out, they are wanted for distributing narcotics and selling stolen goods. They've been stealing people's medication. So for those of you voting drug addicts or possible break-in, good call. Looks like whatever was in the woods isn't coming after all.